Thank you, Agatha. So big data is changing business all around the world. I'm sure that's the same here in Asia. Our next panel includes 4 of our customers to talk about some of the practical ways to get started with big data. And here's a quick video about one of those customers, Search Party.
Fanatical support's not just a marketing term. It's lived and breathed right from an account services level down to a technical level. And I continue to be impressed by guys I've never met. The Search Party is a revolutionary product that changes the way people recruit. The problem in recruitment is that recruiters are often all chasing the same companies. They want people who they're going to get repeat business from. They want people who can pay anywhere from 15 to 30%. The problem is if you've got a team or a workforce of 5 to 6 people, your hires are actually more important, but you can't really afford fees like that. So we really believe that small or medium business needs the services of recruiters more than big business. We present an employer-facing search, a simple way to engage with recruiters through their data. We commoditise the database for the recruiters, and employers can go in, search for candidates they like, set the terms of the arrangement that they're comfortable with, and there's recruiters on the other end who have representation. Minimum entry for Rackspace is good quality stuff. They make sure that you've considered backup. They make sure you've considered redundancy. And when you check all those boxes on other providers that are supposedly cheap, they usually go over. In fact, almost all of the ones I looked at were actually more expensive. The service I've gotten from them hasn't changed from when we had a firewall on a single server to now that we spend something like 20 times as much as we did. That's what's amazing. You know, in the early days we didn't need them for some of the big data challenges. We didn't need to have some of those complex conversations, but they were always there. We bounced some ideas about should we be virtualizing our dedicated infrastructure, and we came up with the answer that was no, which was fabulous, right? If you've got a partner who's not just trying to cram something down your throat, you know you're getting that advice. And we're pretty technical, we're pretty advanced in our own team, so we can have those conversations, and your guys are just so much more experienced, and we can just say, have you tried this and how did it go? And we've always got a really healthy answer. The value we get out of our relationship with Rackspace is just off the charts.
So please welcome our panel on big data, moderated by the CEO of Current Asia, David Ketchum. David, do you need this, or do you have any slides?
No,
Okay,
we're
good.
live. Hi, good morning,
then.
everyone. We're the last thing between you and lunch, so hope you enjoy. We'll introduce the panel in a moment, but first I have a question for the audience here. How many of you are a little bit tired of discussion about big data? How many? Okay, so we'll go right to lunch. No. So one of the things that Rackspace has found is that the big data conversation is something that many stakeholders understand, but what they're interested in is the war stories. What's happening at the front line of big data? What are some of the use cases? What are some of the headaches? And that's what this panel is all about. So I think we'll kick things off by letting each of our panelists introduce themselves. Stuart, we already know a lot about you, but let's start with you, Mateo.
Yeah, I'm the CTO of Postcurrent Tag, actually, which is a social travel directory. So basically, it's a place where people discover new places to travel and share experiences. And we capture a lot of data coming from users. Actually, we analyze and we do try to predict the next place where you can go and help the user in finding their next destination. Actually.
As you know, I'm Stuart Gatenby from the Search Party. I don't have much more to add to that. Other than to say,
You're smaller in real life than you are up there on the screen.
I lost weight. I guess the only thing to add to that is that we're really reducing the time to hire for employers and the cost, and making recruitment services available to small, medium enterprise in a way they weren't before. And for recruiters, we're getting them out of the sales cold front and into managing relationships, which is what we think they should be doing full time.
And my name is Shawn Lee. I work for Pivotal Software. We're a Silicon Valley company, and I head up product strategy for Asia Pacific region. We specialize in helping companies go through their digital transformation process, and we fundamentally believe that every business is becoming a digital business, whether you're auto manufacturers or you are a financial services company. This doesn't work. Oh, there we go.
Stereo.
Good. Now I can hear my voice. That's good. So we fundamentally believe that every company is becoming a digital business, and digital is really powered upon the user experience as well as the analytics that's powering these applications. So that's what we focused on taking some of the experience that we've learned working with the internet giant and now working with the enterprises to basically do the exact same thing.
Can you hear me? Now you can hear me. Okay. That's big sound for big data. I'm Greg Shay. I'm with Hortonworks. I've been in the region for over 20 years, working in computing with HP and then Sun, and more recently in mobility with BlackBerry. And for the last couple of years, helping Hortonworks help propel this wave of the next adoption, which really is a paradigmatic shift, right? It's a shift in the way of thinking about information, essentially is what big data is. It's not about lots of data, really. That's kind of like a really bad first order approximation of what big data is. In fact, it's more what it's not. It's big thinking, insight about how to do things more efficiently, of course, save money, so that you can redeploy time, effort, and skill and motivate and retain people, your people, as much as your customers, around new products and new services, which are gleaned from these new tools that we have and new capabilities. So I'm pleased to be here, and I look forward to this discussion.
Great. Thanks, Greg. So beyond the technology, one of the keys to big data is, we all know the Freakonomics book, right? So one of the toughest things about big data is, yes, the technology and the platforms and the analytics, but what's the Freakonomics question, right? What's the big, hairy problem you're trying to solve? So today we've got folks who are on the enabler side with Pivotal and with Hortonworks, but then we also have some end users. So we hope we can pull out some of those use cases. So maybe, Stuart, if you could just dig a little bit into what big data, how does it help your business? What are you actually digging into, and where do the insights come from, and how does it propel you forward?
Well, we have, we started out with a fairly small team, and we have a lot of candidate data. So I think for us, being able to provide insights on that candidate data that are useful to employers and recruiters and deliver that in an effective way is what is the most valuable aspect of that. I think
How many records are you dealing with?
we've got about 15 million candidates, but that's total profiles. So we actually deduplicate candidates from recruiters. Obviously, recruiters have often share candidate CVs, and that's where a lot of smarts is. Deduplicating 15 million candidates results in trillions of effective comparisons. So for us, the use case is a little bit interesting. We're not just storing lots of data.
You got a service center in India, and just do it all manually.
Yeah, right. So, we employ machine learning algorithms on that data to work out which candidates are the same. Obviously, you can't just use email address or phone number. So it gets pretty complex and pretty heavy.
Greg, what are some of the use cases you've seen come out of Hortonworks?
Well, there's two main areas. I think two main areas for adoption of Hadoop in general, and Hortonworks being one of the leading distributions of Apache Hadoop. The first appeals to the, shall we say, self-preservation side of the brain, which is cost reduction. So on enterprise data warehouse and ETL offloading, we've seen savings of plus 90%, which again allows for the redeployment of that resource and that mind share in the organization to the second half of the brain, which is, now that we've survived the cost pressures, how do we differentiate in the market? How do we get the edge over our competition? How do we provide better service, better analytics, better prediction, better where are you at with your travel? And that's what we see very often with the adoption, starting from an initial POC of a couple of, 8 or 10 nodes in a cluster. Let's try this in a non-mission critical area, and then it works, and then let's migrate it to something that's a little bit more core, whether it's on call records or whether it's in eliminating and reducing machine error in manufacturing processes across the range of verticals and services and manufacturing and retail. There's the next wave, which is how do we do it better, faster, and how do we put out new products and services and get the jump on the information economy and provide better. So that's essentially it. The progression is like this, and adoption as well, and deployment. Okay.
Great, thanks. Mateo, at Postcard and Tag, you're embarking on an interesting project alongside of Rackspace. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, the project aims to, we collect basically all the data coming from our users, and we try to, of course, match user experiences together and do prediction of where is going to be the next location where the user is going. And we gather, in addition to that, we have other data sources, travel data sources, that we try to cross-match with our data to basically to make the data make more sense. Basically, that's what we're doing.
Okay. And in terms of the business, how does that help with a competitive advantage or enhance the usefulness?
Well, you know, this gives us a lot of insight of the user behavior. And of course, what we're trying to do now is having more and more events coming from the web, coming from the mobile, and just log all these events and analyze them so that we can gather useful insights. And once we have like once we profile the users, basically the next step is apply some prediction algorithm to come up with a prediction based on the past behavior of the user.
Right.
That's where we're going.
Good. So now we're going to move on to some of the headaches. And Shawn, not to make you the headache guy, but why don't we start with you? What are some of the headaches with implementing a big data approach?
So I would say from a headache perspective, they're really twofold. One, a lot of people think that big data is an IT problem, right? We talk to a lot of businesses, and they immediately say, "Oh, it's big data. Oh, let's talk to my head of IT." Well, big data is not an IT problem. Big data is a business problem, right? Because business is generating data, your customers generating data, and IT can only go as far as setting up the infrastructure and setting up the systems so that you can support the type of analytics and business intelligence insight that you're trying to generate. So very, very much when we work with our customers is bringing business and IT together, really talk about business problems, trying to understand and digest in small chunks. It's funny, we call it big data, but big data, I really think that you need to start small with big data, right?
Big data in small chunks, I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe it's very much a business and IT collaboration when companies are really having successful projects in terms of big data. Well, the other aspect is big data, it's a new thing, right? And we've heard about it for some time now, but there's really a skill shortage in the market. And the guys that are doing big data are really not your typical analyst. They're not sitting there doing reporting, right? They are really doing some very funky data science, mathematical things. And these folks are hard to find. So increasingly, Pivotal as well as Hortonworks, I know we're working with a lot of academia institutions, universities, to help train the next generation of data scientists. So not only do you have the technology aspect, but you also have the skills aspects to supplement the requirements that's coming out in the market.
Great. And Greg, with Hortonworks, all your headaches are cured, right?
Yes, exactly. Actually, it's very similar that Shawn just pointed out. The platform service, it's basically a model very similar to Red Hat. Everything that's coded on Hortonworks is open source. It's out there right down to the last comma of code. So a lot of people we find in China and other markets have been using it because it's a stress-tested version of Apache Hadoop, essentially, which is not really designed for large deployments. So off they go, and they run into difficulties, and then they come along and need a little bit of help. Maybe then we have some business to do. But we do find that the training and consulting aspects of the business, which are not the core, are very much part of the mix. And that's the first point, so to go along with Shawn's point. The second one is this idea of discover your own inner data scientist. People within your own company and your own user group have interesting insights about how to improve the data management or the workflow. And so this whole idea of facilitating in the discussion, bringing in different internal users within your company and allowing them to just have at it, maybe in an offsite setting, injects this kind of excitement in the whole process that's happening that makes it less clinical and less scary monsters. You're really on an amazing journey, as we call it, to the data lake, this big repository where everything comes in, structured, unstructured, accessing it, servicing it, pulling it up, whether it's a batch or it's a real-time stream. It's all there now. We now have the technology to do things that you couldn't believe that you could be even thought of 7 years ago. and it's simple and predictable. And so people who are not data architects, but maybe have an inner scientist, because that's more about the interaction between the technology and the actual deployment and use and benefit of it. So discover your inner data scientist. Use it as a, I'd say, it's as inevitable as the browser before and post. I think that's how big the shift is we're seeing in technology, and I've lived through a few of them. This is bigger than mobility when I was at BlackBerry, which is sort of a refinement and combination of different things. This is like at the level of going from the big box to the little box, you know, the PC, or perhaps the browser. But it's in the enterprise, and it's transforming business everywhere. And it's just so much more accessible when you really understand that it's not that scary. It's usable. And people inside your own organization and your partners are going to be able to make it more exciting and more of a fun ride when you involve them.
The amazing adventure to Hadoop Lake.
That's right.
Steven Spielberg will pick that one up as his next
I
movie.
would have called it the bumpy ride, but yeah.
Hopefully there aren't dinosaurs looming on the side.
So Stuart, what are some of the bumpy places along your big data ride?
Look, I think for us, we didn't have a classic use case, and we really needed to be using technology just that little bit before it came out. So my head of data science, a guy called Dylan Hogg, I almost feel we've cheated him, because now the core dev team's getting into some of the big data tools. There are some books and there are some tools, and we've got access to things like Kafka and other tools that you can use to solve some of the classic problems. But solving that first problem of deduplication took a lot of time. And I think with the new technology, there's a lot of trial and error. You really have to prioritize innovation and give people space to do it. And you know, we went through processes like just not getting anywhere near linear scale with MapReduce, and then we found Spark, which is one of the greatest things that happened to us. And just moving through that process, when you're right on the bleeding edge, you've got to kind of work it out the hard way.
What do you use for your machine learning?
There's a lot of different things the guys are using. So I won't tell you exactly what it's coded in.
No, but it's an example of the excitement of getting people engaged. The first step I find in Pain Point is this data lake, getting everything into one place. Because our largest customer is Yahoo. It's 36,000 nodes, I think, now. And Hortonworks was the Hadoop team from Yahoo that spun out. So that's why the history. And now we're into Japan with a very large and scaling deployment. Anyway, the key point is when you have a problem, you solve it by making it as simple as possible. And that cluster is one location. Talk about multi-tenant, one location. That's possible to do. When all the different content, structured, unstructured, clickstream, you name it, is all accessible and manageable and interoperable with different ingest engines or different applications, it's amazing how beautiful the world can suddenly become. Not just the huge cost savings and simplicity, but the retention of engineers. For example, in the old stovepipe world, you'd have to have people working on stems and doing workarounds, and that's grunt work. And now the competition and the edge is to get the best engineers, to get the best people on your product team. And if you have them take away a lot of the grunt work and they can actually work on consoles and do fun things, they are going to be retained and they're going to be incentivized. And that part of the organization, the back end, the upstream, the product people, the people who fix things, go from being sort of down the hall to the left to being in the wheelhouse. Really, really part of the organization, as important as the people in selling and financing and the normal sort of glory roles. So I think that's the key takeaway we've had in the last 3 years. We see this transformation that this one repository enables.
I feel like you've been kind of teleported into an HR conference, right? So not as much the technology, but the
really
talent.
Is about
we
human
can help
capital.
you with that.
It really is about talent.
Does anyone know anything about recruitment? And so, Mateo, in your experience, what are some of the pain points?
Yes, I want to reconnect to what he just said, actually, that it's very nice and useful to have all the data in one place, actually, and being able to access it. And, the fun part is doing the data science stuff with the data. But, there is all the part that it's, in a way, the boring part, that is all the data ingestion, the ETLing, which is really a big
ETL?
pain.
What is that, Mateo?
Is basically taking your data and transforming it and making it...
You mean extract, transform,
yeah,
and load?
Exactly. So basically all this is really a painful process. And I'm talking from this experience and other experiences where you have different data sources, you have streaming data sources, you have batch data coming from databases, from text files, and you want to make to create a layer that makes the life of a data scientist easier, actually, to access the data, and that takes a lot of time, and sometimes is not really calculated in all the big data process by companies.
It needs to be. I think that's getting your data out. And I think, look, one of the things that people tend to do is throw the baby out with the water, so to speak. They look at, I'm not going to use SQL Server, I'm not going to use traditional systems, I'm going to dive straight in, let's build it all on Hadoop. After all, Facebook does it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know about you, but we're not as rich as Facebook. So.
Yeah, I agree. And the other problem that, personally I found is some performance issues as well, actually. I mean, you have to, the problem is that sometimes data scientists tend to do some experiments or small data set, but when you go into production, that's a completely different scale. So maybe the same algorithm and the tools and the languages and the libraries that you used in your prototype, they're not actually working in the production environment. So you have to, rewrite the code and
even partition configurations and everything.
Exactly.
A whole end-to-end sort of trial and error.
Which speaks to this whole thing of small test.
That's
internal.
right. Yeah, do it piece by piece.
It works, and then you sell it.
So moving on a bit, so Rackspace just loves Hadoop and Cassandra, right? Because if you've got a big data issue, that's how you come into it, right? Rather than from the managed cloud approach, it's like, what are the platforms that really make it work? And I would say that Solve is an anagram for love, just pointing that out. And so moving into more specifically into that kind of Hadoop
Is that
question.
your inner data scientist?
or is it loves?
The panel will take a small break while we do
Someone's been
anagrams
playing
here.
Scrabble for some time.
But let's take a couple of minutes just to dig deeper specifically into those Hadoop applications, right, and how they work. If you could just pull out for the audience a couple of use cases, right, where either businesses or industries have really deployed that technology.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Oh, is it working? Good,
Yeah.
we're on. I'm not Italian, but I do have some French, some French blood, so I like
You
to
can
use.
move your hands while you talk. It's all right.
Yeah. There are three things. One great pastor I had, he always said, there are three things. And I always remembered three. But the fourth, I'd fall off the edge. So let me talk about three things. One of them, again, is cost reduction, as I mentioned, for enterprise data warehousing. That's a massive and constant, almost in every case, you'll find a resonance with that, especially if there's a fair amount of data, truly big data in the sense of amount, as well as complexity and variety of data ingest. So I alluded to earlier, there's a number of cases where we see over the run of 2 or 3 years, cost savings on that line item alone of plus 80%. There's one e-commerce group that works in autos, and they had massive cost savings of, I think it was 95% from what they were doing before. In that same case, though, can illustrate the second wave, which is now that you've got it all in one lake, the cost of maintaining has gone way down, so you can maintain it for a lot longer. It can be structured and unstructured, it can be clickstream, it can be geospatial, it can be whatever. You don't need to have figured it out yet. You just have it. You have it accessible and managed and secure. And there it is. So all of a sudden, when you can do, instead of 6 months of records before the Falcon comes, or so the management comes in and says, that's all we can afford, well, you can do 24. Why not do 5 years? Why not do 10 years? What could we do if we had 10 years of records, nicely stored and accessible, not on, old machines over there on tape, but like right there? The mind boggles, right? So then what happens is you progress. In that e-commerce case, they started progressing to predictive analytics on pricing in the marketplace. And they got it down to 99% accuracy within $20 of what that auto in that color and that set of features should be. So their business really, really took off. They were differentiated in the marketplace, and they just grabbed huge share, huge mind share. Perhaps I could illustrate it. One more example, manufacturing. There was one client producing, I think, storage devices. And they had like a reject level of 10,000 units plus a month. And again, using the integration of, in one space, in one lake, the different kinds of feeds, the server logs, fuming those in, looking at predictive analytics on where the process is, we're having what kind of problems we're having at what point with what machine and process errors. We're able to get it down to like less than 100 units rejected a month. So that's real bottom line saving, but it's also more predictable product, more reliable product, brand enhancement. So I could go on with many others.
So you might
but
come
I'll
for
leave
the
it at
cost savings, but you stay for the business benefits.
Exactly. You come for the savings, and you end up getting liberated,
Yeah.
and your people are incentivized to think. And as I said, beyond just the normal tech team, everyone is really can be creative. You can go into the cubicles in the HR division or in any other division and start to think through the business process. How can you make it more efficient? Imagine what you could do, and you get all kinds of creativity in your organization. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Maybe I'll add one as well. So, I think a lot of companies, technology companies at least, like to talk about US examples because it's large and people recognize the name. So let me talk about one in China. So how many of you shop in a supermarket? At a Welcome or a Bakai or something like that, right?
Guilty.
And we all do. Now, if you think about what a supermarket does, the supermarket really have no idea what you have bought. Right? They know what each transaction is. They know how many loads of bread or whatever it is from the receipt. So it's always transactional data. But they don't know what you pick first. They don't know when you go in there, what are you looking after? What are some of the patterns that you are doing? So we truly believe that data or big data project is really more on the actionable side. You can store everything that you want, but if you don't action against that data, then the data is just sitting there doing nothing, right? So when we help with customers, especially this supermarket, and this is, I think, their third largest supermarket chain in China, what they do now is they said, look, we want to really understand what the customers are doing. We want to know down to the effect that when they go into the store, do they look left first or do they look right first? Because that will help them determine what kind of product they're going to put on the left-hand side and how much they can charge the vendors in terms of putting things on the left-hand side, right? So they started with a digital experience. They wanted to understand what are customers doing, what are they buying. So it's this whole notion, I'm sure we all hear about it, O2O, right? Online to offline. So they created with a digital experience. They learn what their users are doing, what they're picking online, and what they're picking offline when they go into the stores. I mean, we're Chinese. Well, I'm Chinese anyways. I know I'm sitting among four other foreigners, but I'm Chinese.
没事，我听得懂。
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I mean, we like to pick things, right? Especially your meats and vegetables and fishes and whatnot. But I don't really need to pick a can of tomatoes. I don't care, right? As long as it's not expired, it's okay. So this supermarket wants to say, hey, what are some of the items that people like to pick online on a mobile device? What do they want to do when they go into a store and pick the fish and the vegetables, and what order do they want to go by? Analyze all of that data, then they can do real-time promotion. They can cross-sell and upsell. They can also figure out which store you're going to go into and thereby staff that store appropriately during different times.
Do they do promotions whilst they're in the store?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have another exact same case.
Yeah.
On the Apple, there's a tracker, and you're there. You've gone to these places. And
right. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to pass it back to you. But I think we can all relate to a supermarket example.
Giving my panel back to me. So we're going to wrap things up with a little tip from each of you, right? So as you embark on a big data adventure, what's your piece of advice? And why don't we start with you, Stuart?
I think for any organisation, not just the so-called glamorous startup, learn how to be agile with innovation. I think you really have to find a way to deliver without worrying about, businesses are so risk averse, you can't always give a CEO the message that you're going to have this out there next month. Right. But you can find ways to have a day-to-day process. In the next few days, I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to work out if this product or this tool is going to solve this problem. I'm going to run some tests. And if you bring that into your day-to-day process, you can then really track, and your superiors, without having to have full technical understanding, can then track you too.
Right.
And that applies to investors, C-level executives, whatever.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's keep it simple, stupid, as they say, or silly, or ask for love. Small, so a POC, right?
Yeah.
And then build it on a non-critical area. The second thing attached to that is an HR panel. Perhaps you can tie it into the HR, or the motivation of the company, by having some sort of competition or game or play with it. Because if you have a playful approach to it, it will work.
We do it
if
with beer.
You do?
Yeah, we do it with beer. We just dangle beer in front of engineers and they
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. And Mateo?
Or other chemicals.
Mateo, what's your...
So my takeaways are to reconnect to what I was saying before, don't underestimate the data engineering process before the data science.
Absolutely.
So think about engineer your data, building a platform that enables data scientists to do their job, actually. So make their life easier.
Pivotal
because
video.
the productivity is going to be much, much higher.
Absolutely. Yeah. And data scientists don't like data engineering a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean, a tip to leave us with?
I'll keep it simple. Big data is not an IT project. It is business and IT. They need to work together. Otherwise, you're going to go in circles.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've all earned your lunch. Give the panel a big round of applause, please, and thank you.
Thank you.